Here, let me explain the notion of function in programming in some more detail. What is a function? Functions do exist in mathematics, as you know. For example, with sine x equal y, we see that y is the sine of the triangle with angle x. In mathematics, a function relates something to something else. For example, the sine function relates an angle x to the sine of the corresponding triangle. Ruby somewhat confusingly refers to a program that tries to compute a mathematical function as a function. Confusing? Yes, I agree. Therefore, even though it is called a function in Ruby, in other programming languages, it is sometimes called subroutine. So in this lecture, we will call it a subroutine. We will differentiate by calling it a function when we mean a function in mathematical sense. And so let's change the title. So we will talk about subroutine. You might wonder why I'm insisting on this. Let me explain a little. A function is a mathematical function like we just saw. Think of a function as representing the goal of a computation. For example, the definition of sine is more visually this length of a triangle of angle x. On the other hand, a subroutine must specify computational method. Therefore, as a subroutine called sine, we must state how to compute the sine of the trigonometric ratios from a given angle x. In that sense, when we speak of subroutines, think of including the computational method. Let's consider this difference with one more example. Consider the function square root of x, which is defined as a truncation of the square root of x. Yes, you may feel that it is not so enough for the definition because we don't explain what is square root. Okay, let's consider a definition that uses basic notions only. How about this? Square root of x is a maximum number y such that y squared is no greater than x. On the other hand, this is the definition of subroutine. I'm leaving out details, but this subroutine basically computes the y mentioned here, the left side definition for a given x, and it returns the value of y. What's the difference? Well, font? Oh yeah, font or typeface. You have good eyes. I'm using two fonts. For mathematical functions, I use Times New Roman. On the other hand, this kind of font, so-called typewrite font, is deliberately used for subroutines and programs in general. Actually, I have been using this distinction throughout this lecture. Did you notice it? Well, this is a superficial difference. Is there any? Yes, the subroutine is written in more detail. It indicates in detail how to compute, how to combine basic individual computations as a program. This is not given in a mathematical definition for function in general. And for mathematical functions, it is enough to specify the correspondence between the input and the output of the function precisely. No need to explain how to compute the output. This difference has a further meaning. In fact, functions, that is, mathematical functions, have a role in programming. They are used to specify the goal of computation, specify precisely what should be the output for a given input. The goal of computation is given by a function, and the method of computation is by a subroutine. So various subroutines can be defined for a single function. For example, this is just one single computational method for computing square root. And it might be possible to compute the same square root with a faster computation method. In general, for developing a program, we would first define a function, the specification of computation. Then we consider how to achieve this specified goal by computation, which is a subroutine or program in general. Finally, let's go over what we covered. First, a function is the goal of computation and establishes the specifications of the computation. Subroutines are called functions in Ruby, but Ruby function or subroutine establishes the computational method. For making a relatively large program, it is recommended to divide it into small tasks or prepare tools for composing the target large program. For defining each subtask or tool, we define it as a function, a mathematical function. Then consider how to compose the target large program by using these functions. In this way, the outline of the program becomes visually clear and programming becomes easier. Then we can consider how to implement each function as a subroutine. This is a standard programming approach and one of the important programming techniques. Let's summarize how to write a subroutine. You write def, def, and then space until the corresponding end is the definition of the subroutine. The name of the subroutine is written next to def, def, as you can see. The data given to the subroutine is taken as an argument and variable names such as x, y, z, like this. Then we write return command to terminate the computation and return to the place where the function is called. In this example, the value of variable w becomes the value of the function. This concludes this session.